Hey everybody. Hey. So this is my sixth box of records from the collection that was taken out of storage for me. And so box number 6. And this is Tanya. So the first one in the box, Tanya by the Ceyleib People. This one had, he's not credited by name, but it has Ry Cooder, the famous blues guitarist, is on this record. So lots of really great psychedelic guitar work on it. It was on the Vault record label, and it's called Tanya. I'm not exactly sure how you pronounce it, but it is Ceyleib, Ceyleib People, and it just has an amazing psychedelic cover on it. I think, yeah, okay, so the cover painting was by Ry Griffin. So if you're into 1960s psychedelic poster art, this can also be collectible for the reason, just for the cover alone, because Ry Griffin did a lot of those 1960s San Francisco style psychedelic posters, but this is also a great psychedelic record. Yeah, Ry Cooder with a D is credited as Ry Cooder on the record because he wasn't that well known. This is the Ark, Chad Stewart and Jeremy Clyde, better known as Chad and Jeremy. Chad and Jeremy are the guys that are very easy to confuse with Peter and Gordon. Anywho, Chad and Jeremy, I think they were on an episode of Batman once, but this is their post-Sgt. Pepper's psychedelic folk album called The Ark. And I think I picked this up at a flea market, but definitely good psychedelic music, even though Chad and Jeremy aren't necessarily considered very hip from a psychedelic standpoint. So here are some good exotica records. Chino. This is Chino Africana. So Chino, or however you pronounce it, he was actually a guy from the United States. He was a black guy from the United States who passed himself off as some sort of African tribesman, but he did these great African-style percussion records in the 1950s and 1960s. And so this was one of the records he did, Africana, on Dot Records. And another one he did was called Jungle Echoes on Omega Records. This is actually one of the easier ones to find, partially because he's very much in demand. Chino is very much in demand. It's very popular exotica stuff, stuff that people really like to collect. If you can find one at an estate sale or at a garage sale somewhere, you definitely should get it because it is hard to find. Let's see. Chameleon Church. Chameleon Church was a psychedelic band, and they're not very well known today, but one of the reasons that they are well known is because one of the members, the drummer, was a guy named Chevy Chase, as in Chevy Chase from Saturday Night Live. So before Chevy Chase became a comedian TV star, he played drums in this band called Chameleon Church. In fact, right here, yeah. So here is the back cover, and this guy over here that's a little taller than the other guys, that's Chevy Chase. You can actually look at the cover, or look at the cover, and it's Chevy Chase. And the Cha-Cha-Chas. So the Cha-Cha-Chas started out as an exotica group in the 50s, I think from Belgium. But their biggest hit was in the 1970s, and it's like this disco funk record with really heavy breathing on it called Jungle Fever. I will not try to attempt to hum it or imitate it, but you probably have heard Jungle Fever before. It features very prominently on the soundtrack of Boogie Nights in that early scene in the movie where Dirk Diggler is at that pool party. So it's a very Latin sounding record with a lot of heavy breathing and orgasmic moaning on it. And it was actually a top 20 hit in the United States. So Cha-Cha-Chas, Jungle Fever. And now, from exotica to crazy novelty records, this is Sam Chalpin, My Father the Pop Singer. So this was a takeoff on an Alan Sherman comedy record called My Son the Folk Singer. So the concept here was My Father the Pop Singer. And so what happened is there's this producer named Ed Chalpin who basically drags in his old elderly father to sing songs. And his father could not sing a note. His father was Sam Chalpin, and they have him dressed here like what's supposed to be Sonny Bono on the front cover. Like he's wearing like bell bottoms and a striped shirt and a Sonny Bono wig. And he sang, for example, he sings the Rolling Stones' Satisfaction. He sang the Batman theme song. The guy is ridiculously out of tune the whole time. But it's one of those, like if you like records that are by people who cannot sing a note, this is one of those novelty records that does that is still on a major label, and so not as expensive as some of those private press outsider records, but definitely outsider in terms of this guy does not have any musical training at all. The Chambers Brothers, The Time Has Come. This has the hit, The Time Has Come Today, on it. So this is a classic psychedelic soul record. I got it back going through garage sales in the Berkeley and Oakland areas when I was in graduate school because the record was very common there. It was very easy for me to pick up a copy, very cheap for like $1. But it is a great record. I don't think it's particularly rare right now, but still an amazingly good record. And the album version of The Time Has Come Today is like 10 minutes long. So you get to hear the whole album version and not just the singles version that you might hear on oldies radio. It's definitely like basically they were a black folk gospel group, and then they got a white guy as a drummer, and so they got all hard rock psychedelic for a bit, and but they still got a lot of soul to them. So the Chambers Brothers, The Time Has Come Today, and let's see. This one next to the Chambers Brothers, Chandra. This is an EP or extended play album. Transportation, and so this has 4 songs on it. So this is a teenage girl. I think she's about 13 or 14 years old, and for some reason, she got involved in the 1970s no wave scene around CBGBs. And she put out an EP. And one of the songs on this record is called Subways. And it was heavily sampled by the Avalanches on a song they did. But this girl named Chandra, she is absolutely amazing. Like she's 14 years old and she's doing this crazy new way. Like she's like a mini teenage girl, David Byrne or something. You know, just mind blowing. And the song she does on here, Kate. She does a song, Kate, which is like basically a song that's dissing a mean girl at high school, and it's just amazing. And if you were Kate, I probably would have folded up and died or something, because it is such a strong diss song. Although, you know, it's new wave, not hip hop. And let's see. This is kind of a new agey record, but it's from the 1950s. You know, some people were on some really weird spiritual trip even as far back as the 1950s. And Ravi Shankar, the soundtrack to Chappaqua. So this is a soundtrack record, and Chappaqua. It's a pretty druggy movie from 1965 or 1966 thereabouts, and it has the Thugs in that movie. It also has soundtrack music by Ornette Coleman, the jazz guy, and it has music from a budding young composer who was credited on the soundtrack as Phil Glass, but he prefers to go by Philip Glass now. So you've heard of Philip Glass. And this is Smash Flops by the Characters. So this is just a really bizarre 1950s novelty record. It has, for 1950s novelty records, it has some pretty pointed political commentary on it. I think I have another record by these guys that has like 50 million commies can't be wrong, which, you know, was a kind of hilarious song. Chariots of the Gods original soundtrack. So this is one of those cheesy 1970s documentaries that's like a forerunner of all the crazy UFO crap that they put on History Channel today, and it has lots of really cool electronic music. And The Charlatans, one of the earliest psychedelic bands from San Francisco. They were the first band to play under the influence of LSD. They were the first band to play to a psychedelic light show. Unfortunately, because of record company skullduggery, they didn't really get a chance to release an album until 1968 or 1969. But when they did, their sound was more kind of a rootsy Americana sound, and they had kind of stripped away the psychedelic elements. But it's still good, still very much a pioneering San Francisco rock group. And let's see. Oh yeah, I think this one was in the Incredibly Strange Music group, but it's Going to the Dogs with Charlie, Bill, and Steve. So it has some interesting material on it. But the cover, look at the cover. It's just great. They have all these little doggies on the front cover, dogs and guitars. And I'm a dog person. I have 2 dogs, so I like it. Beatle Country. So this is another one of those all Beatles covers albums that I collect. And Beatle Country is by the Charles River Valley Boys. And so they are a country bluegrass group that did some really nice, it isn't all instrumental, it's actually, they have very good country harmonies on this. And a lot of the Beatles songs, they're more folk rocky stuff from 1966. especially the stuff on their Beatles for Sale album, actually lends itself very well to a country and western arrangement. So this is actually quite good. And a chant for your plants. So this is an album from the 1970s. It was from an era when people liked to talk and play music to their plants. So basically, it's a woman talking to her plants with flute music. And I mean, you got to listen to it at least once because that is an amazing concept. Let's see. We Can Work It Out. Charlie Latimer and Paul Bowles, or Charlie and Paul. That I mainly bought this because of the Beatles cover on it. It has We Can Work It Out, and it has a bunch of Bob Dylan covers on it too. Bob Dylan covers are very good to have. And we have Chastity by Cher. It's a soundtrack to a movie. It didn't do very well. But it was supposed to be a movie that was supposed to turn Cher into a movie star. Cher eventually did become a movie star, but in the 1980s. But they tried to turn her into a movie star like in the late 60s, early 70s, and that didn't work so much. And this was one of the soundtrack records from that. But what's good about it is she was still married to Sonny Bono at the time. And because he's trying to make a soundtrack, he's actually like experimenting with some kind of funky stuff that was popular at the time. So there's some good drum beats on it. And the Leo Choliak, am I pronouncing that correctly? So this is another all Beatles covers album. I love the cover with the 4 bowler hats and the Union Jack. This is a French composer, Leo Choliak. I think this is a French pressing, but there are UK pressings of this as well. But it's Les Classiques des Beatles, so it's classical music arrangements of Beatles songs. And Carlos Chavez. So Carlos Chavez, he is a very interesting 20th century classical composer. He is very interesting because he did a lot of compositions with percussion. He did a toccata for percussion, and he would use a lot of Latin American percussion in his work. So Carlos Chavez. So he's a classical composer of the 20th century who unfortunately does not get the accolades or recognition he deserves. And then so another thing I cover, so a subgenre of Beatles music I cover is Beatles polka cover versions. And this is one of the more common ones. Larry Chesky and his orchestra, and the title is Hey Jude. So they do a polka version of Hey Jude. And, they also do a polka version of Obla Di, Obla Da, because actually it fits to a polka arrangement. There's actually a lot of polka cover versions of Obla Di, Obla Da. Don't ask me how I know, but I know. Chevrolet sings of safe driving and you. So this is kind of a spoken word-ish record because it's teaching safe driving to teenagers. But because they were trying to be hip and be all how do you do, fellow kids, they put these folk rock songs on the record that are about safe driving. So, like, there's these folk rock ballady type songs about how you need to be careful with your wheels contacting the road when the road is wet. I mean, it's folk rock, so, it's very good music in that style, but it's about traffic safety and driving safety. Chicagas Piacici, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Chicagas Piacici. This is a Latvian group, a group of, I guess, teenagers or young people from Chicago who were of Latvian descent, and they would make music. And one reason I have this is it has a cover of Yellow Submarine in Latvian. So I collect foreign language cover versions of the Beatles. A Child's Introduction to Atomic Energy and Outer Space. So this is one of those, I like to collect a lot of 1950s, early 1960s stuff with a lot of that gee whiz attitude toward the space age that people had before Neil Armstrong landed on the moon in 1969. So there's a lot, these are really interesting from a historical standpoint. And there's a lot of stuff that's like great spoken word content that can be sampled on this kind of record too. And let's see, Rebirth, The Children, very nice psychedelic cover. This is another one of those psychedelic bands out of Texas. You really got to pay attention to those psychedelic bands out of Texas. They're usually pretty good. And this one, Chimera, a fantasy in jazz rock mid-east sounds. So this is kind of jazz psychedelic belly dance music with like 12-minute psychedelic belly dance jams on it. So pretty cool on that level. Getro Chihuahuas. This was a Canadian record. It has a cover of Bungalow Bill, the Continuing Adventures of Bungalow Bill, the Beatles song from the White Album. So that's a good record to have. You don't have many Bungalow Bill cover versions. Now here, a lot of people will envy me for this, but I have the first 3 studio albums by the Chocolate Watchband. The Chocolate Watchband, of course, there is almost no band name that could be more psychedelic than the Chocolate Watchband. And they had kind of 2 kinds of songs on their albums. They had kind of some Rolling Stonesy, garagey rock records. At least on their first 2 albums, they would kind of alternate between Rolling Stonesy, garagey rock kind of songs, and then the more hippie psychedelic stuff. But both of it was good, and they rocked pretty hard. I think they did have some help from studio musicians. Also, sometimes I think like some of their singles, they had like a different lead singer, or like the record company made them switch lead singers or something like that. But fortunately, they did get to play a little bit themselves, and it was good stuff. So this is the Inner Mystique Chocolate Watchband. And this is, fortunately, the cover is a little, this is a Canadian pressing of the Chocolate Watchband No Way Out. In the United States, it would be on Tower Records. This is on Spartan Records. This was actually, there was an error with this pressing. So for some strange reason, the side 2 songs play on side 1, and the side 1 songs play on side 2. I don't know why that happened. It was, they didn't sell that many copies of this record, but it is, it's a very rare record, and this is the Canadian press on it. And so let's see, where's my third Chocolate Watchband? So the third Chocolate Watchband. So in addition to the In addition to the Rolling Stones garagey version of the Chocolate Watchband and the more psychedelic version of the Chocolate Watchband, they also kind of got into a sort of psych country rock, biker rock version of themselves on their final studio LP, One Step Beyond. So I had previously owned a bootleg copy of this, but I eventually tracked down an original copy for myself. And so I have original copies of the first 3 Chocolate Watchband albums. And one of the notable songs on this record is a song called And She's Lonely. And the reason it is notable is that Led Zeppelin borrowed from it for their song Stairway to Heaven. So the And She's Lonely, there's this really, they stretch out the words, and she's lonely. And it's very much how, it's very much similar to how Robert Plant is stretching out, and she's behind a stairway to heaven. So he kind of borrowed that from the Chocolate Watchband. So not a lot of people know that, but this is a very underrated record because most of the psychedelic collectors like to gravitate toward the first 2 of the Chocolate Watchband, but all 3 are great. And well, even with this one being not rated as highly, I think it's still ridiculously expensive. But I worked for several years to get a complete set of the first 3 Chocolate Watchband albums, and I wish I had advice for you, but mainly because I bought them 20 years ago, it didn't cost as much, but it was still expensive back then. Let's see, Bobby Christian, the Mount Fujiyama Suite. This is an electronic record. This is a very unusual record. Fortunately, it's available on CD from Companion Records, a CD and LP reissue label associated with my friend Will Louvier. And Will Louvier is a really nice guy and a really big guy in the private press scene. This is it's a bit of a messed up copy. I just mainly got it so I could have any copy at all. But it's called Beyond the Blue by the Christian Astronauts. So it is basically a Christian puppet or Christian ventriloquist record, but with all these sort of sound effects that they're making with their mouths about how they're flying up to heaven, and they have robots, and it's really imaginative. Even if you're not necessarily comfortable with the religiosity behind it, it's just they're nice people. And this one, this is an example of what I was talking about with Edith Boxill and her music therapy record. So this is a music therapy record. I think this was from this was a music therapy record. It is a Christmas record, and so it's called Christmas at CPH, and the CPH stands for Children's Psychiatric Hospital. So it was done with kids who were, in the hospital for psychiatric reasons, but it's actually quite beautiful. It's beautiful in like the way a flower coming up through the concrete is beautiful. It's just beautiful in that way, and it's also in a style. So there was a style for teaching kids music that became popular in the 1960s and 70s. It was developed earlier, but it was called the Orff schoolwork method, or in German, the Schulwerk method. And it was mainly a method for teaching kids music that had them banging on a lot of percussion instruments and banging a lot on xylophones and on instruments you play with mallets. And the idea was that you had to get instruments in the hands of the kids, and you had to get kids to understand music as a bodily, kinetic experience. And so these Christmas songs are done in that style. But if you ever get to see anything in the Orff schoolwork style where you have a children's record that's done by children with a lot of mallet percussion and xylophones and recorders and things and little tin flutes and things like that, usually those records are pretty good because it's the kind of music that's very hard to screw up because it's very simple to learn, because that's why it's taught to children that way. This is a Christmas compilation from the Motown record label. Probably not that rare, but I love Christmas records, and I don't like the ordinary Christmas music. I like Christmas music that has, by different artists that you've heard of. So this one has Christmas songs by Stevie Wonder, and Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, and the Temptations, and Diana Ross, and I just love it for that reason. Unfortunately, the Jackson 5 aren't on it. They weren't yet on the label, I don't think, but there's a good Jackson 5 Christmas record too. Let's see. And this is Chrome, and Chrome is kind of a psychedelic into punk era group. They were from the late 1970s, so they had both psychedelic elements and punk elements, and they were a big sort of cult act in San Francisco. So I have Chrome, Half Machine Lip Moves. Here's another Chrome album, Read Only Memory, and what's this? Chrome, The Visitation. So I have a bunch of Chrome records. This was a flea market buy. It was a great flea market buy. It was 50 cents at the Silver Springs Flea Market in Silver Springs Township, Pennsylvania. And I think I got it for about 50 cents or $1. And it is a great Boston psychedelic group. And it has a lot of the F's on it. So female vocals and fuzz tone and flowers and flutes and, just perfect psychedelic sounds. And it has some soft feels to it, but it also, it doesn't feel too soft. It's not really sunshine pop. It's just kind of light and airy and relaxing and, very flowery, powery kind of music, and just really makes you feel good listening to it. So it's called Chrysalis. That's both the name of the group and the album. And I was lucky to find a copy for about 50 cents $1 at a flea market. And then, let's see, the Churls. That's an early 70s group. And let's see. Cincinnati Joe and Mad Lydia. So that is it's a private press act. They're psychedelic, sort of psychedelic lounge, and it's a married couple that is in charge of the band. Chris Clark. So Chris Clark, she used to be a secretary at Motown Records. This is a Motown label album. Chris Clark used to be the secretary to Berry Gordy. It is believed that she had an affair with Berry Gordy, but she also ended up getting a record deal herself on Motown Records, and she was one of the first white artists to get a record deal on Motown. She actually is good. She's actually good. I mean, she may have slept with the boss, but I mean, she actually deserves the record deal anyway. Very good stuff. Let's see. Love's Gone Bad is a very good a sort of white soul garage group called the Underdogs. But Love Song Dad is very good. She did another one called Do I Love You? I don't think that's on this record, but if you like kind of northern soul record, like sort of the classic Motown soul, but it's a white woman singing it, but she doesn't sound like she's white. It's really cool. And Petula Clark, she's known for the song Downtown. This is one of her French-Canadian records. So Petula Clark used to sing in French. She was known as a yay girl in France before she became a pop star in the UK and US. And Cassius Clay. So Muhammad Ali, before he changed his name, he had a spoken word record called I Am the Greatest. And Clear Light. It isn't too hard to track down. It's a band on Elektra Records, so they were kind of contemporaries of the Doors. They didn't obviously sell as much records, but it's still a findable record, good psychedelic record. I think one of their differentiators with this was the band had 2 drummers instead of just 1 drummer. And let's see. Oh, this is an unusual Christian record. The Click Kids, and it's okay. It's fairly amateurish Christian garage music, but it has a great cover. Jesus is a Soul Man by the Click Kids. I still like music, but not exactly the most virtuosic musicians. Click. So Click is an interesting group. Most people haven't heard of them, but they recorded a song called Superman, which was recorded by REM. So actually, REM Superman, that wasn't originally an REM song. It was originally a psychedelic song by the group The Click. So that's probably their best song. And so I obviously had to get this album just to get a copy of the original version of Superman. And we have Del Close and John Brent, How to Speak Hip. So this is a classic beatnik stoner comedy record from, I think, 1962. Some of the information on Wikipedia about it is actually wrong. It's not from 1958. It was actually early 60s. And it actually comes, so it's called How to Speak Hip. And the joke is that it's an instructional manual. It's like an instructional record to teach you how to go from being a square to being hip and speak hip words. And really it's just a bunch of comedy skits. But it's done in the style of an instructional record. And it's actually kind of funny, and like it has this sort of stoner beatnik vibe to it, which was kind of ahead of its time since the record only came out in like 1961 or 1962. So Del Close and John Brent, I think both Del Close and John Brent were in the movie American Graffiti, so they did some acting work too. And Del Close became famous because he founded the Second City troupe. Second City, known for Second City TV, and it's an improvisational troupe that is still going strong. Second City is known for discovering a lot of the people who end up on Saturday Night Live, including John Belushi and the people from the first cast. And Del Close was a pretty weird guy. He demanded that that when he died, his skull, he wanted his skull preserved so that his skull could be used in performances of Hamlet. So when Hamlet does the Alas, poor Yorick speech in Hamlet. He's supposed to be looking at a skull, and Del Close wanted to be that skull and actually put instructions in his will to be made into that skull. And yeah, so seriously weird guy, very weird comedy record, stoner beatnik vibe that's a little ahead of its time. So definitely, like, it's way more hip, I think, than your standard Cheech and Chong records. So definitely very funny. Oh, this was a great great buy that I made at an estate sale. Clyde and Phyllis, a musical fantasy about the world's first guitar-playing elephant. And the guitar-playing elephant is wearing paisley bell-bottoms and beads and has long hair, and he's floating out around in space for some reason. And they sold this as a kids record. So, as you can see, this is why Gen Xers are why they are the way they are, because they were given children's entertainment programming from hippies who were still recovering from acid flashbacks. And let's see. Oh, this is the Cobblers. Warm Are the Sounds. This is a sort of soft pop rock Christian record. It's from the UK, and it's one of the first Christian rock groups. It's Legends. Iron Eyes Cody, and so Iron Eyes Cody is best known as the crying Indian from those Keep America Beautiful anti-littering commercials in the early 70s. He actually turned out to be an Italian guy. Like, he had no Native American blood at all. But anyway, Iron Eyes Cody and Alexander Long Rifle. The reason I bought it is not because of Iron Eyes Cody, but this guy, Alexander Long Rifle, he is absolutely just, he does these amazing lounge records where he tries to sound like Elvis, and it's just, he has all these crazy records, and so I try to buy all the records I can find by this Alexander Long Rifle guy, and he is just absolutely crazy weird and amazing. And Dennis Coffey and the Detroit Guitar Band, Evolution. So this one has a very famous funk instrumental from the 1970s called Scorpio. It was kind of a hit. But pretty much anything Dennis Coffey does, which is mostly funky instrumental stuff, pretty much anything he does is worth your time. And so this is Dr. Sidney Cohen, LSD, an exclusive open-ended interview with Dr. Sidney Cohen and excerpts from Capitol Records' news documentary album LSD, specially edited for broadcast. So this is an LSD spoken word record. I like to collect a lot of spoken word records that are associated with the hippie drug era. Most of them are anti-drug. But whether they're anti-drug, pro-drug, I just sort of like the samples and the weird things that they talk about on those records. And, this is a good one. Cold Cuts. So, Cold Cuts, very few people have heard of this. This is a band. It's called a kitchen band. So, a kitchen band is a little bit like a jug band. And both jug bands and kitchen bands were bands that people did using material they found around the house. So sometimes you couldn't buy your own instruments. You'd make do with stuff that you'd make into instruments around the house. So this is an all-female band from a women's college, and they play as a kitchen band with instruments like a washboard and knives and forks and spoons and other stuff like kazoos, and so it's a very interesting sound. But they also do songs that were actually like popular top 40 songs in the day. So one of the things that, unfortunately, these songs are not on the back cover, but one I remember being on this record is a cover version of the Swinging Medallions' Double Shot of My Baby's Love. So, which is actually was a pretty raunchy song for its day. So to have a record by a women's college doing a cover version of Double Shot of My Baby's Love, where basically a guy is telling people that his woman loves him so hard that he has to pass out. I mean, it's a really cool song. So if you hear the original version of the Swinging Medallions' Double Shot of My Baby's Love, it's a great song. But this has a cover version of it that's all female cover version of it, which is pretty naughty thing to do in 1966 or whenever this album was released. Here's a street musician record, George Coleman as Bongo Joe. So it was released on Arhoolie Records, which is a record label out of the San Francisco Bay Area that focused on folk music and jazz. But George Coleman. So these are field recordings of a guy who's a street musician who plays drums on plastic cans and stuff like that. And Collage. There's a major label group by this name. This is not that group. This is more of a private press. It's a group called Collage on Golden Crest Records. It is Sunshine Pop. It's a little like a group called The Free Design, if you've ever heard of The Free Design. Very sunshiny pop music. It has a couple of, so it has a cover version of the Beatles' Day Tripper, which was one reason I had to get it. But pretty much all the cover versions on this are really good. It's kind of a sunshine pop. I think they were also trying to go for a Brazilian bossa nova type sound to it, like that band The Carnival that I talked about in an earlier video. And let's see. Neophonic. I don't even remember what this is. I love having it, but I don't even remember what the hell this is. I think it's like I don't even remember. Okay, let's see. Yes, a lovely bunch of Al Jasbo Collins and the Banditos. So Al Jasbo Collins, I think he was a DJ, and he kind of did beatnik jazz poetry. And this is on Impulse, which is a really great jazz label. So Al Jasbo Collins and the Banditos. And this one has a lot of, he did a bunch of nursery rhyme themed beatnik stuff. So this one has Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and Little Red Riding Hood, and Jack and the Beanstalk. So he does beatnik style recitations of nursery rhymes with jazz backing. And let's see what we got. Colonel Bagshot, Oh, What a Lovely War. There's the opening track on this is called 6 Day War, and it was used as the main sample for the DJ Shadow song 6 Days. So if you like that DJ Shadow song 6 Days, this is the group that did the original, kind of the original that it's based on. Colors. These used to be cheap. I hope they're still cheap. So this is Colors, spelled with a U, Colours, and it's their first album is really good. It's kind of Sgt. Pepper-ish, pop psych, and it's on Dot Records. And I don't think it's particularly rare, so if you can find a copy for cheap, do get it. It's just really good. So it's underrated. So if you're trying to get into pop psych and want something not too expensive, Colors is a good record. And Alice Coltrane. So these records are very hard to get. I don't even remember how I got this one, but Alice Coltrane, if you can find Alice Coltrane, she was the wife of the jazz great John Coltrane, but Alice Coltrane was a band leader and jazz musician in her own right, and she was amazing, and she was like really into a lot of, sort of cosmic, Afrocentric consciousness and talking about Egyptian mythology and cosmic astrology and astronomy and jazz, and she was on her own trip, and she was very, very much a true original, even though she was the wife of John Coltrane and John Coltrane, but she was not piggybacking on John Coltrane's talent. She had a lot of talent and originality of her own, and if you can find anything by Alice Coltrane, consider yourself lucky, because a lot of this stuff is rare, but it's also amazingly good musically. The Columbia Princeton Electronic Music Center. So this is 1950s, early 1960s era electronic music. Let's see if I can see. So some of this was released in 1964, but some of these compositions were recorded as far back as 1959, but they don't necessarily sound like 1959. They sound a little bit more futuristic than that. So I sometimes like things that sound ahead of their time. And this is one of my nice El Combo Cinco. L is the article, so I alphabetize it under combo. Salsa Inglesa. So it has a cover that pays tribute to Abbey Road, and it's salsa music. So it's Beatles songs done salsa music style. Yeah. This is okay, so my copy has a lot of ring wear, so the cover has seen better days, but it's a pretty good copy, at least the disc is pretty clean, but it's the common people, of the people, by the people, for the people, from the common people, is the full title of the album, and this is just really good atmospheric psych music. It isn't soft, it isn't hard, it's just pure psychedelic, a lot of orchestration to it, and just a lot of the orchestration that just, I don't know if I want to say it manipulates you, but it just creates a soundscape, emotional world for you, and there's maybe one bad track on the record, but the rest is just, it's like 99% great. It's just a great record. And Les Compagnons de la Chanson. So this is a French group, and I got it because it has a cover version of Yellow Submarine in French. And computer music. So this is another one of those none such contemporary classical music stuff. So if you see that, why don't I get closer to the camera so that I can show you what those are. So if you see this curly Q N, that is, there could be some really interesting experimental classical music on it. So, computer music. Here's another album of computer music from the outside in. This was on Folkways Records. And computer sex. So this is another, I guess this is sort of cheesy. It's trying to be cheesy and late 70s, early 80s and sexy. And it has, computer electronic noises on it. More computer music. And okay, this is Project Comstock. It's by an arranger named Frank Comstock, and it's called Music from Outer Space. It's one of the best of the early 1960s space age music. So this is 1962. So space age. So they sometimes call it space age bachelor pad music. So it creates a sort of outer space soundscape with its musical arrangements. But it was very much how they looked at outer space before Neil Armstrong actually got on the moon. So a lot of it was about how we imagined what outer space would be like. And Concern. America, Where Are You? So this is a Christian record. It's kind of a guitar folk rock. Concern was originally known as a band called the Guitar Ensemble. And the Guitar Ensemble is really good. I'll have to point it out when I pull it out of the box later. Chimbalom. A chimbalom is it's a very rare instrument. It's a little like a harpsichord, but also kind of like a combination harpsichord, auto harp kind of thing, and it's played with mallets. And it's from Eastern Europe, and this is there are all these kids on the back cover and on the front cover because basically it's a record of all these kids playing the chimbalom, and they play the Beatles Yesterday, which is one reason why I have it. But there's some other Beatles covers on chimbalom that I'm trying to find as well. It was a Hungarian instrument, so they often a lot of these chimbalom records in the United States seem to be out of the Chicago area. I guess there were a lot of Hungarians living there, but this is one I found. The chimbalom, Concord chimbalom players, and the last one in the box, Condello, Phase 1. So it's a psychedelic record. I'd have to rehear it. It's on Scepter Records. Scepter didn't have a lot of psychedelic acts. Scepter was mainly known for having, I think, Dionne Warwick and the Shirelles on their label. But this was one of the psychedelic acts that they signed up once, psychedelic music got to be a thing where every label had to have their own psychedelic band. So Condello was one psychedelic band that got signed up to Scepter Records. And that's box number 6.